Alex Eala's Roland Garros journey is over almost before it even began. And honestly, this one hurts a little differently, because losing at a Grand Slam is always difficult. But losing to one of your close friends while struggling to fully find your rhythm on one of tennis's biggest stages, that creates a completely different emotional feeling. The final score against Iva Jovic was 6-4, 6-2. But the bigger story was how quickly the momentum slipped away from Eala during the key moments of the match. And unfortunately, it continues a worrying trend that's starting to follow her through the 2026 season. Another early exit, another missed opportunity to build momentum, and another reminder of just how brutal the women's tour has become for rising young players trying to establish themselves consistently. Because against Jovic, Eala didn't look overwhelmed by talent alone. She looked slightly trapped between aggression and hesitation. That's dangerous on clay, especially against a player like Iva Jovic, who thrives when she's allowed to control baseline rhythm and dictate patterns confidently. From the opening games, you could already feel Jovic settling into the match faster. The American looked sharper physically, more comfortable extending rallies, and more decisive when attacking short balls. Meanwhile, Eala struggled to fully impose herself early, and then came the first major momentum swing. At 1-all in the opening set, Jovic suddenly exploded through 4 consecutive games. Just like that, the scoreboard became 5-1. That's the brutal reality of modern women's tennis. Matches can change incredibly fast emotionally, especially on clay where momentum builds point by point until suddenly one player completely controls the rhythm. For a while, it looked like Eala might completely disappear from the set emotionally, but to her credit, she fought back hard. That deserves recognition because a lot of young players mentally collapse after falling behind that quickly against higher-ranked opponents. Eala didn't. She broke serve in the 7th game, then strung together 2 more games to cut the deficit to 5-4. Suddenly, the pressure shifted slightly. And honestly, this is where the frustration of the match probably becomes strongest for her fans. Because just when Eala seemed ready to fully re-enter the contest emotionally, Jovic immediately stabilized again. That's maturity. That's composure. And honestly, that's probably the biggest difference between where these two players currently stand in their careers. Jovic handled the emotional pressure moments better. At 5-4, instead of tightening up, she calmly closed the opening set and prevented Eala from creating a full momentum reversal. That was massive psychologically, because on clay, chasing matches after losing the opening set becomes exhausting physically and mentally. The second set stayed competitive early, but you could feel Jovic slowly tightening control from the baseline. Her shot tolerance looked stronger, her movement looked cleaner, and perhaps most importantly, she stayed patient. That patience eventually created the decisive break in the 6th game for a 4-2 lead. From there, the match honestly felt inevitable. Eala continued fighting, but the emotional energy required to fully turn the match around simply wasn't there anymore. And that's the difficult reality of Grand Slam tennis. Sometimes the scoreboard looks relatively close, but the emotional momentum tells a completely different story underneath. Now let's talk honestly about the bigger picture surrounding Alex Eala right now, because this loss is not happening in isolation. There's still enormous excitement surrounding her potential. And understandably so. The talent is obvious. The athleticism is real. The left-handed game style creates unique challenges for opponents. And when Eala is confident, she can absolutely produce high-level tennis. But consistency at the elite level remains the biggest challenge. That's where the gap still exists between promising young players and established contenders, especially on the WTA Tour right now, where the physical and tactical demands are unbelievably high every single week. You cannot drift mentally for stretches against top 20 opponents. Sensed uncertainty early and immediately accelerated. And honestly, that's something Eala will continue learning through difficult matches like this. The best players in the world do not wait for confidence to appear during matches. They impose themselves early and force opponents into uncomfortable positions emotionally. Right now, Eala still seems to fluctuate slightly when momentum turns against her. That's normal for a developing player, but it's also the next major step in her evolution, because talent alone is no longer enough once you reach this level. Everyone can hit, everyone can move. Everyone believes they belong. The real separation comes from emotional stability under pressure. And that's what Jovic showed beautifully in this match. Now, obviously, perspective matters here too. Alex Eala is still extremely young and continues facing some of the toughest competition of her career every week. Development in professional tennis is rarely linear, especially for players trying to establish themselves consistently on multiple surfaces. Clay remains one of the hardest surfaces for aggressive young players to master because it demands patience constantly. You cannot rush points emotionally. You cannot panic after long rallies. And you definitely cannot disappear mentally for multiple games against elite opponents. Those lessons are painful, but they're part of the process. The encouraging sign for Eala fans is that she never stopped competing in this match. Even during the roughest stretches, she kept searching for solutions and trying to shift momentum. That competitive spirit matters enormously long term, because players who continue fighting during difficult periods usually give themselves chances to improve eventually. But there's no escaping reality either. The results need to stabilize at some point. Another early Grand Slam exit is difficult, especially after the expectations surrounding Eala entering the season. People want to see deeper runs now. They want to see sustained momentum. And honestly, that pressure only grows louder as young players become more popular globally, especially in the Philippines, where Eala carries massive expectations as one of the country's biggest tennis hopes ever. That spotlight can become emotionally exhausting. Every loss becomes heavily discussed. Every tournament suddenly feels important. Managing those expectations while still developing as a player is incredibly difficult. And honestly, this may become one of the most important phases of her career psychologically. Can she stay patient with the process? Can she continue building confidence despite difficult results? Can she avoid letting outside pressure distort her development? Those questions matter just as much as forehands and serves right now. Meanwhile, credit absolutely belongs to Iva Jovic. This was a mature, controlled performance from a player who clearly understands her identity on court. She dictated the baseline exchanges intelligently, stayed emotionally balanced when Eala threatened a comeback, and handled the pressure moments like an experienced contender. That's why she now moves on to face Emma Navarro in what could become a fascinating second round battle. As for Eala, her singles campaign may be over, but her tournament is not completely finished yet. She still has doubles alongside Canadian Victoria Mboko, where they'll face the dangerous pairing of Leylah Fernandez and Diana Shnaider. And honestly, doubles could actually help her emotionally after this difficult singles loss. More court time, more rhythm, more opportunities to compete without carrying the entire pressure alone. Sometimes that matters enormously after disappointing singles exits. But for now, the reality is simple. Roland Garros 2026 became another frustrating chapter in Alex Eala's search for consistency at the highest level. The talent still exists. The potential still excites people, but the climb toward elite status remains brutally difficult. And matches like this show exactly why. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you still believe Alex Eala can become a future Grand Slam contender, or do you think consistency at the highest level may take longer than many fans expected? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And if you love dramatic tennis storylines, rising stars, and deep analysis from the biggest tournaments in the world, stay connected with TennisIQ because Roland Garros is only getting more intense from here.